Okay, now that we're done actually creating our automatic tracks, all we really have left to do is combine our automatic tracks with our manual tracks. So the manual tracks, if you recall, are in a separate node. They're going to be down over here under this tracker 1. So what we want to do is actually import these into our camera tracker. Now, in order to do that, what we have to do is come over here inside of our camera tracker node, and we want to come over to our user tracks. Let me scroll down here a little bit, and you'll see down over here we have the options to import tracks or import the tracker. Now, import tracks we could use if we had actually exported our tracks out of the software into text files. We didn't do that. Ours are still inside of that node, so we can just go here to import tracker, and you can see it automatically recognizes that we do have a tracker 1 node. Now, I will warn you, after I hit OK, even though there's only, I believe, 12 trackers in here, this takes actually quite a bit of time, and you might even think Nuke has crashed. I don't know why that is, why it's such an ordeal to import that stuff into here, but it does take a little while. So when you hit OK, just kind of leave the computer for 5 minutes or so, let it do its thing, even if it looks like Nuke crashed. Give it some time. Of course, if 10, 15, 20 minutes have gone by and hasn't snapped out of it, maybe Nuke did crash. But for the most part, you just kind of need to wait it out. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here. I'll pause the video while we wait for this, and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, we're back, and that took roughly 5 minutes, so it is a considerable amount of time, but they are here now. I found if you only have 3 or 4 user tracks, it will be much faster. But again, for about 12, roughly 5 minutes. So you'll see them here. Don't worry if you kind of see them off here in kind of strange areas where you wouldn't expect to see them. They're only active when they're actually this bright green color, the way they are here. Unlike these other tracking markers, they don't disappear when they're not active. You can see as we kind of scroll over to here, this one will eventually go bright green right there, and you can see now it's part of the tracking solution again. Unfortunately, it's blocked there. There it goes. So anyway, that's about it. We've now have all of our tracking information that we're hopefully going to need. There's always a possibility that we might need a little bit more or have to retrack some of these if our final solve doesn't work out. But that does bring us to the end of this module. Now, in the next module, we're going to cover how we can use all of this tracking data to begin creating a 3D solve. And we'll talk a bit about in that module how all that works. For now, though, let's do a quick wrap up of this module. Okay, so let's talk a bit about what we covered. So we started by talking about creating manual tracks. That's when we used our tracker node and we actually manually selected the different tracking markers on our actor's face and tried to track them throughout the shot. Sometimes those tracks would last the entire length of the shot, sometimes they'd have to be broken up, and sometimes we even had to manually set some keyframes. We also talked about the very basics of removing lens distortion, just enough to get our tracking information to work. There is a lot more information that would be required to know if you need to do a lot of lens distortion removal or correction. We really just went over the basics. We also talked about setting up our camera tracker, basic settings such as the film back, the lens, as well as the resolution of our footage and the type of camera movement. We also took a look at setting up the automatic tracks. So things such as the number of tracks, the track separation settings, the track length, so we know how the minimum length of our tracks should be, as well as a track threshold, so the detail level that it can still pick up on. And we also talked about using a mask that we actually made earlier, a roto, in order to only track in certain areas. And finally, we talked about combining our manual tracks with our feature tracks. So that's the end of this module, and I'll see you all in the next one.